Well, hey there everyone. How goes it today? Now here's the topic I'm going to try to cover as quick as possible with a minimal amount of rambling. But over the past few days I've taken several notes. I have watched just about everything you can possibly imagine on the coronavirus situation. And I know that there are mixed feelings about this out there. And what I mean by that is some people say it's overblown, it's not a big deal, and there are others who think it's a huge deal, and they're worried. And then there are people who just don't know what to think. My intent here is to inform you to the best of my ability on what's going on based on my own research and my own kind of obsession with viruses over the years. But also, listening to the experts is what's most important. And we live in a time when not a lot of people trust experts. And there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. So, first off, I wanted to make this video 3 days ago. I made a video about a month ago about this, and a lot of people pretty much just laughed it off. I've mentioned it to my friends and family, and most people just laughed it off. When I went out to buy my masks, I knew that it was pretty much pointless. I mean, masks aren't going to save you from it, but I thought I might as well have a few in case I do have to go out in the coming days, and the next day they were gone. I went out a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and bought sanitizer, cold medicine, things like that, just in case, and then they were gone. And so it's not an issue of panic. This is an important factor. It's an issue of preparation. And most Americans aren't prepared for something like this, so we're going to suffer the consequences. And I firmly believe that this is going to get much, much worse before it gets better. But I'm not trying to scare you. There's a bright side to it. And first off, my intent here, unlike a lot of folks, isn't to fearmonger or to get views. This video isn't to inform my subscribers, because a lot of people have actually asked me what my thoughts are on this, because they're actually fairly concerned for their families. Yesterday, the health organization declared it a global pandemic. That means absolutely nothing to me. As far as I'm concerned, the minute it spread to other countries, it was a pandemic. And the most depressing aspect of this, because I wanted to make this video yesterday, but I thought I'd just listen to Trump's speech and then Boris Johnson's speech and the Italians and see what they're saying and what their plans are. But still in the top news was the stock market. It wasn't about how many people might die or what we could do to prepare, but stock market plunges. I get it. We live in the Western world. That's what people's eyes are on the prize, right? It's always about the money. This is going to bite us in the ass in a way we never could have foreseen. Well, at least some of us probably could have. I've expected something like this. It's not like it's a surprise to me at all whatsoever. I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner. But here's the issue people need to realize. This virus is going to come through society, it's going to infect millions of people, and a lot of people will die. The question is, how fast will it flare through the communities? Because that's the biggest issue here that we're missing. People say, well, if you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. Oh, well. It's true. But if you can ease the burden on the healthcare system, even a little bit, then it might actually be able to help people who really need care. Because there are places where they're turning down non-essential surgeries, everything is shut down because they're trying to deal with the patients, like in Italy right now. Now, a lot of folks aren't taking it seriously and they're downplaying it as a hoax. There's a lot of these truthers out there, which this is kind of a depressing angle to this. I've always thought of the truthers as the ones who are preparing for things like this to happen. And when it does happen, do you want to be a wolf or a shepherd? In other words, do you want to spend all your time talking about who created the virus, or how it's all a lie, or how it's an election year, or a media ploy? Or do you want to say, look, this is actually happening, here's what you can do? Because I believe in being a shepherd, not a wolf. You know, if you really believe in sheeple, then why don't you teach them something? Why don't you actually help people prepare? It's kind of frustrating because a lot of these channels out there, they instantly go to the conspiracies and have nothing to do with actually preparing for this. But the preppers, they know what's up. So you can downplay it as a hoax. You can continue to do handshakes if you want. You know, I went to my kids' school yesterday and they do high fives on the way out the door. I confronted both of their teachers, and one of them just downplayed it. The other teacher said he was going to bring it up with the principal. Nobody else was saying anything. I mean, is it obsessive to not want my kids to get sick at school, to not spread it to the rest of the community? So I'm spending too much time on these first topics. There's a lot to cover here. In Seattle, we have up to 30, getting on to 30 dead and 400 plus infected. They've closed several schools and businesses. I'm an hour and a half south of Seattle, okay? Oregon, right across the bridge, just basically quarantined areas where you can't have large gatherings, and Portland schools and various areas have had outbreaks as well. Of course I'm concerned. I have a mother that's old. My friends have moms, parents that are old. And, why risk it, right? Well, as I was saying, a lot of people say it's not serious. The Boy Scout motto is simple. Be prepared, right? Be prepared for anything. So when people tell you don't panic, don't worry about it, don't listen to them. Going out and buying basic food and necessities that you might need for the next month or so is not panic. It's being smart. And I firmly stand by that. So the government at this point is incompetent and divided. Now I'm going to give Trump credit. He finally came out and banned travel from Europe. And then, of course, there's plenty of people who attack him saying, oh, it's too little, too late. This is not a time for fucking partisanship and arguing amongst ourselves about politics. As much as we know this is an election year and that's a big deal to people, that's going to be put on the back burner pretty quick, guys. I mean, the government is incompetent and divided. Nobody seems to be able to agree on what's going on. Do not look to your authority for advice on what's going on. Look to the health experts that spend their lives studying these things. But as I said before, we've lost faith in trusting those who have that knowledge. As I said, it's going to be a burden on the system if too many people get sick too fast. There aren't enough IVs, there aren't enough ventilators, there aren't even enough masks for the nurses. I mean, that's pretty sad when you think about it. These masks right here, which are just the standard surgical masks, I maybe got 30 of them or something, these are only good if you're sick and you have to go out in public to not get people sick. These do not stop the virus. Now these masks, the little N95 ones, they can stop a majority of particulate matter. So if you absolutely have to go out in public, you can wear one of those. But of course it doesn't matter because nobody's going to be able to find them anyway now, right? So what can we do? Well, I'll get to that. Because I'm not just sitting here scaring people. I really want to cover this so people are aware. A lot of folks have brought up the fact that South Korea has tested they have tested over 100,000 people. They tested 10,000 people in one day. And the US has only tested 4,000 people in total. And people are really pissed about that. And even in Seattle, the nurses from the nursing home where the first outbreak was, they couldn't even get tested. So the question is why? Now, the administration is telling us that the tests from South Korea wouldn't pass muster because they didn't believe that the tests were adequate. They thought there was something wrong or they hadn't passed, the FDA approval, whatever it might be. That I can understand. However, at a time like this, maybe it's worth just using it just to be safe. I don't know the details of that, but once again, this is where I'm saying the left and right need to come together on this and not fight about what we could have done. It's about what we can do now. One important aspect, we need to commit to free treatment and testing for every American citizen. And I mean this is important. I watched earlier as Redfield, who is like Trump's main, health expert guy, and he was being grilled by Congress, and this lady was asking him, will you commit to free treatment for any American who's infected, who needs it? Because if we don't do that, people are going to be afraid to go in. Then they're going to spread it to their family and friends. They're not going to isolate because they're going to be afraid they can't afford the testing and treatment. And look, whatever your opinion is on socialized medicine and healthcare, this is one time where our tax dollars should be able to protect us. And they are utterly failing at doing that. Closing the borders, closing flights, that's great. But we need the leadership to stand up and say people need to really be aware that this is going to kick us in the ass. This isn't like a flu virus. I keep hearing this. Folks in America will not quarantine without guidance from their leadership. And I think that this is changing, but hopefully it's not too late. My whole hope for this is that it brings us closer as a society, and maybe that's a long shot. I wanted to say, first off, people really need to stop comparing this to the flu. The flu kills about 0.1%. We don't know how many this kills yet. I could throw around numbers, but they're saying they believe a minimum of 1% because there's a lot of undiagnosed cases, but up to 3%. I mean, the total known infected are 120,000 have tested positive, just the ones that have been tested. And out of those, 4,000 have died. So that's around 3%. Now I'm guessing there are millions of cases by now that have been undiagnosed. But we can't really assume how bad it's going to be. Therefore, we have to listen to the experts that are telling us, shit, we're closing borders. People need to really pay attention here. If the flu kills 0.1% or 0.1%, that's over a period of the year, okay? Flu is continually going through the community. This is different because it's all hitting at once. So comparing numbers doesn't do it any justice. But if it really is 3% death rate, that's 30 times higher than the flu. That is too much of a burden to the system. You know, if you compare it to a school, if you take your average school and you say, well, what's 3% of a school? That's a whole bus full of kids going off a cliff, right? And I'm not saying the kids are going to get sick, because actually this is the scariest thing, is the kids generally show mild to no symptoms, but they could be carriers. And that's another reason why we're afraid to close the schools, you know, it's not because we're afraid of the main reason they won't close schools is because of free lunches and because of, it's basically daycare for a lot of people, including a lot of nurses who need to go to work. But the thought is, if the kids go contract it and bring it home, the nurses are going to be sick anyway. And it's a difficult situation to be in. So I just like to say, consider the elderly, not the self in this case. Consider those weakest in our society. Because if you're one of those stubborn people who says, I don't care if I get it, I'll get over it, that's fine. But at least be aware of those who are weaker that might want to live out their lives, you know. It's scary for a lot of people. I thought of that comic with the dog, that meme with the dog where he's sitting there in his recliner, I guess, or in a chair, and his whole house is on fire, and he says, this is fine. I thought about that as how beautiful it is to watch the flames of a campfire until it spreads to the trees, and next thing you know, you're surrounded, you know. We're so mesmerized by what's going out there that, oh, it's in China, it's in Europe, oh, we only have a few cases here. And so downplaying it's not going to help, because the virus has no borders, no boundaries. It doesn't care what race you are, what ethnicity, it doesn't care what culture or what religion you are, and especially doesn't care if you're left or right wing. So, as I said, preparation's not panic. You know, it's like driving safer with your kids in the car. Anybody who drives with their kids knows you've got to drive a little safer than you might usually. And I feel like we have to feel that way about society in general. Faceless enemies are hard to fight. And it's not the time for the I told you so, or, oh, I told you this would happen, or, you guys are wrong on this, because it affects us all. Blaming Europe and China isn't going to solve the problem. It's all of us. And this isn't even considering the 500,000 homeless people who are highly at risk, who will spread it around their communities as well. And we need to take care of everyone. So, depressingly, our nation should have prepared for this a long time ago. We have utterly failed at this. The Center for Disease Control should have this shit under wraps. We knew this was coming for a long time. And I know people will downplay it until the last minute, but me being an hour and a half from Seattle, you know, I have to be a little cautious, especially with what's going on up there. So, you know, let's say you don't die from the virus, that's fine. You'll get sick and you'll get it better. But some of these illnesses can last for 4 to 6 weeks. It can be very serious. So mostly, beyond the cost of human life, it's going to cost the economy heavily. A lot of places might have to shut down. So what can we do? We can have basic supplies, dried food, pet food, things like that, just in case, not because they're going to run out, but because you don't want to have to go to the store too many times. If you have extra money, just buy double of what you would usually buy, as long as it will last long enough. And, you know, I had some guy argue with me about washing your hands, for on and on about washing your hands. I said, you know, yeah, you can catch the virus through the air, of course. But washing your hands is a preventative measure. It can remain on surfaces for days. And so, you know, if somebody grabs a door handle, you grab the door handle, wipe down your door handles in your house. You know, it's common preventative measures that we usually should take, but now it's ultra important to do so. The people that are telling you it's a hoax, just ignore them. It's not worth your time. This has no immunity. We have no immunity to this, and it hits people hard. So regardless of who's telling you it's all a lie, eventually they're just going to have to back down and say, okay, this is really happening. Listening to the experts on pandemics is great. I would highly recommend to watch the last, and I don't know if it was the latest, it was a few days ago, the Joe Rogan interview with a disease expert who had worked for like 5 administrations. And he lays it out pretty bare in like an hour-and-a-half interview and says, this is what we're going to expect. I would listen to the guy. He knows what he's talking about. This is not the last virus. If you haven't heard of CWD, it's chronic wasting disease, which occurs in deer in America. So we talk about how the Chinese interact with their wildlife and, oh, you know, they're dirty, they're getting these diseases from this wildlife that they eat. Well, the same thing's happening from hunters hunting deer in America. They're not, you know, this chronic wasting disease the deer are getting, it's just close to being able to move over to humans. So what I'm saying is next year it could mutate and all of a sudden humans would have it, and there's no solution for it. You can't even sterilize the equipment you use. You have to throw it in the landfill because you can't sterilize it. It's that horrible. And so there's a lot of viruses out there. This can happen at any time. And it's just a matter of being aware. We as humans, as we push further into nature and take more of our environment for our own, we're going to encounter these things. And I'm surprised it hasn't happened more often. So this is going to happen. This virus is going to unfold as a pandemic. A lot of people are going to be affected. In fact, everyone will be affected one way or another. The question is how fast and how long. What can we do to mitigate the damage and to ease the burden on the system? So we need solidarity. We need strength within our communities. If you have elderly neighbors or family members, you know, they may laugh at you and say, oh, it doesn't matter, but at least make it known that you will help them when they do need help, if that's what happens. And this will most likely lead to a recession, but it's not this that's going to lead to it. This was just the trigger. We've been in a the false idea that the stock market can keep climbing forever is, you know, that shouldn't be on the top of our mind. You know, what's really important is community, and hopefully we get back to that. Tomorrow will come and bring more problems for us, and we have to deal with the things as they come. And that's how I feel about it. So I'm hoping I covered every part of the topic. Yeah, I wanted to. This could be a lot worse right now if we hadn't quarantined, if China hadn't quarantined, if Italy hadn't quarantined, if we hadn't stopped travel from a lot of places. Can you imagine how much faster it would have been spreading by now? So it's not that we didn't take any action. But the question you should be asking yourself, if you think it's not a big deal, is if it's just another flu bug, or just another bug, you know, no big deal, whatever, a virus, why have so many governments and individuals taken such drastic action to stop it? None of us are experts, except the experts. And I'm willing to listen to them because so far they have not been wrong on these things. So, be aware. That's all I can say. Hopefully this informed you. I'm sure it didn't ease your anxiety any, if you're hoping it'll go away. But, you know, like I watched Trump's interview this morning and he said, hopefully this will go away in a month or two. I hope he's right. I really do. But I get the feeling that the only way it's going to ease up and go away is if we take drastic action. And that's going to affect all of us. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.